We are Grove Collaborative, and we are in some ways in the right business at the right time because, as Mir mentioned, we are a sustainable brand for home care and personal care products. Which means in practice, in this particular environment, we happen to be in the business of selling, among other things, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and hand soap on the internet, which is sort of the right time to be doing that. We're a mission-driven company. And as we entered sort of this period of COVID sort of dynamics in the business, we saw a whole lot of changes. So I want to kind of dig in, talk through some of the things that we saw change in the business, how we measured those, how we thought about those analytically, and what some of those actual trends were, because maybe you're seeing them in some of your businesses as well. So I have an eye on the group chat as well, so I hope this is somewhat interactive, and feel free to type things in there. I'll have an eye on it as we go. But Grove, to give a sense of scale, I think it's sort of useful to pin this to your own business a little bit. We're a venture-backed company based in San Francisco. We have about 160 folks. Well, when we had an office, we had about 160 folks in the office. The whole employee base is quite a bit larger, well over 1,000, because we have significant headcount in our fulfillment centers. We actually pick, pack, and ship our own products. We hold things on balance sheet. We're not a marketplace. And we are truly a brand in the sense that we actually design, develop IP. We have chemists on staff and make our own products and bring them to market, as well as sell third party. So to give you a sense of scale, which will hopefully help out, we do end up with about 100 daily active Looker users. So we've invested heavily in making our sort of data layer democratized to the entire company, and really rely. We don't have a big analytics team. We have a relatively small team. But we rely on training, and we rely on well-built Looker explorers to make sure that folks can access data. So with that said, COVID changed the business quickly, right? So I'll talk about our story a little bit. And this just talks about sort of what changed from a customer perspective. Needless to say, everybody working from home and all the internal cultural dynamics, and everyone getting set up in their home office, notice I have two globes in the background to look particularly professional, right? Everyone sort of had to find their own journey from a cultural perspective. But what I wanted to talk about was sort of what changed on the customer side. So as we saw a whole bunch of things sort of start to take hold, Mike was on the golf course. I was sitting at home, and we were seeing things change almost hour by hour. We came up with an internal prioritization framework at Grove in order to make decisions in a bunch of areas of the business that really had to act autonomously and act extremely quickly. So we said, okay, we got together as an executive team and said, what are we going to do? What are we prioritizing in order to sort of get through this period as things are changing? So the first thing we decided was look, we're going to continue acting according to our values. We are a customer-first company. We're a company that has a strong moral compass. We are here for our customers. Our customers need us uniquely at this time, and we're not going to do anything to break any of that customer trust. So that's the first thing. The second thing was that we needed to start managing demand to match capacity. This was a really challenging thing to do. We're a startup, right? We've spent basically the last 7 years of building this business trying to get more orders, right? And for the first time, we were totally overwhelmed. And we had our warehouses, we only have so many human beings, we only have so much inventory, we can only get boxes out the door so fast based on our forecasts and our demand planning and our operating plan. And all of a sudden, that demand was really, really different, and we needed to make sure that we could actually service it, right? So we needed to do things to actually, in some cases, mitigate demand and try to do some subtle things to turn customers away for a brief period of time, very brief period of time, while we tried to get more capacity online. So managing demand became a really big deal for us. The next thing was to focus on creating long-term customer value. So we sell hand sanitizer. It is not good for us, and it's not good for our customer base in aggregate if someone comes in and signs up for the first time for Grove and orders 200 hand sanitizers, right? That's not good for us. It doesn't. It's not good for our customers. Even though it might be a very profitable single large order, we needed to figure out how to use all of the limits in the business, whether it's limited inventory or limited outbound capacity, as we sort of ramped all that up, right? How we use that dry powder to create long-term customer relationships, high-quality customers, and long-term business value. So that was our third priority. And then the last one was that we needed to preserve the customer experience, right? We couldn't sell 200 hand sanitizers to someone, not just because it's a bad long-term value trade, but because it takes away the opportunity of our customers who really need us in this moment to get that across 200 different customers, right? We need to figure out how to communicate the fact that we were shipping slower than usual. How do we deal with the fact that all of a sudden we have out of stocks on the website at a rate that we've never seen before, right? So how do we actually preserve the customer experience, make sure that we're communicating clearly and people are seeing the information that they need in order to make good decisions about purchasing with Grove? So a lot of things change really, really fast. Luckily, I think we were fairly well prepared because we have taken an approach to data that allows us to measure and track and respond to things in very real time in a sort of single centralized place instead of having a bunch of sort of ossified reports. All right. So descriptive analytics to the rescue, right? I think that I'm sure folks have seen sort of a lot of analytics slides in the past have some sort of like analytics sophistication curve that starts with sort of, descriptive and then real time and then you walk up to predictive and like optimization, and there's all this like alerting is probably in there somewhere, right? There's sort of this curve of sophistication. The Grove data strategy and the data strategy that, I've sort of driven at the company has really been about descriptive analytics and really nailing the basics. So we've sort of said since the beginning of the company, the goal and the architecture is how do we get all of the data in the business into one place within 4 hours of real time and then report on it with a single tool. And that gives us a bunch of leverage over all of our reporting, right? We get to do a single training, and when folks learn Looker, they can access data from any part of the company, right? We have single documentation. We have a single technology for our analysts to train on. And so we've got a lot of leverage out of that, which I think really put us in a position to be able to respond to something that like created a lot of change in the business really fast. For example, all of these trends changed kind of at the same time in like 1 minute. Oh, is this not sharing? Someone is saying this is not sharing, but I don't think that's me. I don't have the ability to do that. Well, luckily there hasn't been a lot of content on these slides per se, but I will let, oh, okay, I should do that first. All right, well, I'll keep going. Okay, so all of these trends changed sort of at the exact same time, and I'm sure a bunch of you saw the same things in your business, right? All of a sudden, the SKUs that folks were buying were different, right? I'll talk about that a little bit more depth in a second. Like I said, we had out of stock levels we hadn't seen before. Folks were flocking to the mobile app. The way our customer acquisition dollars were being applied were very different. Our media costs were really shifting from underneath us, and which channels were being activated were changing. We were shipping dramatically slower than usual. Customer service channels were moving to live channels instead of email-based because people had questions about like, hey, I need this thing right now, right? The average order sizes started to change, and the way that the discovery of our catalog started to change at the same time. So all of these things shifted, right? And on the right, it says, where are your predictive models now, right? And I think this is something I've heard from some other CTOs as well. We have, a data science function here that was working on a bunch of predictive models and was saying, hey, great, how do we, get a little bit more precision, 200 basis points more precision on a predictive model around our recurring business, because that'll let us, staff our warehouses that much more accurately, which will let us drive down our labor costs, right? And we just sort of had to drop all of those projects on the floor. Right, because all of these trends, you'd see something that had, a bunch of good historic data, and we were getting more sophisticated about modeling it to, predict whether it was going to trend up or down slightly. And all of a sudden, like, all the data is totally invalid, right? All of your predictive models just sort of stop working simultaneously. So we had to really fall back really quickly to our descriptive analytics. And I've heard this from a number of companies where these projects just had to be put on hold because everything's changing. Let's talk about sort of one of these, for instance. And to touch on predictive models a bit more, right? That's a pretty real example. Like we spend a lot of energy trying to predict, with slightly more accuracy exactly what demand will be 4 weeks out so we can staff appropriately. I remember really distinctly, in sort of mid-March, talking with, our CFO and some of our finance team around, what do we think? Let's try to get, something within, 15% of what we think will happen in April, right? And I kind of looked around. I said, look, we tried to predict Thursday on Tuesday, and we missed by 40%. Right, that actually happened, right? Like that was the speed. I mean, folks were here, right? We remember just how fast things were changing. And when you can't predict 2 days out within a margin of 40%, it was a very challenging environment in which to operate. And so what we really needed was, real-time responsiveness. We needed people looking at data, every single day, every single hour. We had stand-up meetings between groups of people that we hadn't historically. We had check-in meetings at the end of the day. And thankfully, we had the data infrastructure there that we could at least pick up on these trends and look at them in real time. Okay, so here's one of them, right? So this looks like a small trend. So we see here March, and what this is a look at. So one of the first things we did was we took a group of SKUs, a group of products, and named a sort of a collection of SKUs that we saw moving in extraordinary ways, our stay well SKUs. So this represents maybe 3% of our overall product catalog. And you can see here, we actually had a move where, on average, historically, in the lead up to this, about half of our orders would have contained one of these products. And I did this quickly in Looker, for this presentation. And if you look at it on a SKU level, it's even more dramatic. But all of a sudden, 50% of our products containing one of these to 70% of our products containing one of these, and they're containing multiple ones of these, right? And hand soap is a big category for us, which is why this number is so high. But if you think about the size of the move here, it doesn't look quite as dramatic in this visualization. But if you think about 50% of your orders containing a small collection representing just 5% or so of your catalog to 70%, that's a massive shift in the concentration of buying to a relatively small collection. And one of the things we were able to do in Looker really quickly is one of the first things our analytics team did was work with merchandising, say, here they are. And we added flags everywhere on our variants on our products that just said, is this stay well, yes or no? So now all of a sudden across every single report that we do, we can start cutting data by whether or not this is a stay well purchase, whether this order contains a stay well SKU. We built these flags all over the place and could start tracking these things, right? So now everything from our inbounding reports, which typically are these sort of boring inventory reports that say, here are all the purchase orders we're expecting, and the historic likelihood of this vendor to ship this thing on time and when it's landing in the warehouse. All of a sudden, the whole company is staring at this report every hour going, okay, is hand sanitizer going to show up in our Nevada facility on the day that we expect? And if so, how do we alert a wait list of customers that we've built, right? So there's a huge amount of action around some of these metrics that historically have been a little bit sleepy, and a huge shift in customer behavior at the same time. So another example, our customers needed us now. So we have two modes of purchasing with Grove. We have scheduled recurring orders, and we have sort of on-demand orders. And this is these numbers can't quite be taken literally. There's a bunch of subtlety here, but this essentially shows a really rapid shift from the on-demand, from the recurring world to the on-demand world, where a lot of customers, instead of purchasing from us on a scheduled basis, rapidly moved. And you can see in March, bang, this spike, all of a sudden a much larger percentage of our orders than usual were on demand, where customers say, ship this to me now, don't wait for my monthly box of stuff. And that's a really big shift for us. I mean, this is a number that if I took this back years, there's a slight upward trend here, but fundamentally, this is a very stable number for us. And a lot of the business relies on that number being relatively stable. So when this changed that quickly, it takes a lot of work to figure out what's going on. We were in a board meeting in May, and our board asked my VP of product some question. I don't exactly remember what it was, but he said, look, I look at the Grove customer and I just don't recognize them. I don't know who this person is, right? Because all of these trends that we're familiar with have just been broken really quickly. And one of the big ones for us was the shift from recurring to some transactional purchase. That affects everything about how we model the business. And it's so unprecedented that one of the biggest challenges we had was whether the customers who were, reactivating or signing up for the first time were exhibiting this behavior shift were going to stick around for the long term. And because we're a recurring business, we really need to understand that, because it affects, whether those cohorts start to stack and we get that revenue later in the year. We've actually seen really, sort of extraordinary quality from the space, but it was totally unclear at the time, if you rewind 2 months, whether we were going to see, sticky good behavior, especially with slower ship times, especially with things being out of stock. It was not at all clear that that's what was going to happen. So one other just like quick hit thing that was sort of useful in a pinch, it's sort of like a tactical Looker, tip and trick here. We had a lot of people touching merchandising like more frequently than usual. We were releasing a lot of new features to handle out-of-stock situations, to build customer wait lists, to do alerting, to re-merchandise categories as things came in and out of stock. And when you have a lot of people touching something, the data quality tends to suffer. And that's true just universally, right? When you have a lot of new people in warehouses, physical inventory counts tend to suffer, right? New people touching things frequently, like degrades, right? The chaos takes hold. So one of the things that we did was we set up a bunch of Looker alerts to tell us about potential merchandising issues that our customers might be experiencing. So for example, if we were onboarding some new SKUs because we had to change some form factors, or we were re-merchandising and bundling things, and as we onboard those, it's pretty easy to skip a step in a process and not put it in a correct category. Like when you onboard a product, you have to put it into one of our navigational hierarchy categories. And if you forgot to do that, it wouldn't show up in some of the places you expected on the website. So all sorts of like little kind of data entry things like that might not be enforced fully in your PIM or in your catalog. We sort of started enforcing these with Looker, so you can use some of the advanced scheduled features within Looker to actually set up alerts. And this is what we did. So we'd say, for example, if a product does not have a category, then once a day at 6 a.m., we're going to send an email to the merchandising team if there are results. So we'd build a query that said, show me all products that have zero categories. Normally there aren't any because everything's merchandised. But we can say, hey, if there are results and there weren't results last time, then email everybody and alert them. So we have maybe 6 or 8 of these that sort of enforce quality in areas where our tools don't do it by default, and let us catch those issues, hopefully, instead of our customers. Really nice things to do there. All right, so one more kind of fun example. So this is not from Looker, obviously, and this is not one of our visualizations, but I want to sort of like motivate talking about one thing that we did that really helped us understand our customer behavior a bit better during a time of really rapid change. So this is from a blog post that's linked on the bottom here, and this is like a growth accounting dashboard. And so what this shows is basically customers entering and leaving the business over time, and some different ratios and different counts of those customers. So if you sort of imagine, this one's done in revenue, right? But you have blue, which is sort of additive revenue of folks coming into the business, and then folks churning out of the business in the same period. And it sort of nets out to some amount of growth in the business. And this is a really nice way of visualizing sort of what's going on in your customer base. And so we've been toying with this idea for a little while. And we had some different ways of looking at this sort of leading up to COVID, but we had never quite been able to nail this exact visualization because I think this is done in Python or R or something. It looks kind of complicated, but it looks really high value. In March, we sort of said, look, let's see if we can get one level of sophistication more to really understand this dynamic with this sort of visualization. Because it's, again, really important to understand where are people coming from, how are they reactivating, and if you can do that in one spot, we can really get it into everybody's head. So we sort of put pen to paper and actually did this in Looker, which I was sort of surprised. I don't think of Looker as having a really strong visualization tool. I think of it as a really strong tabular reporting tool. We actually created this. I removed the axes, but this is from Looker that actually shows this green line, which is aggregate active customers at any given time. So we have some analytics that determine whether we consider a customer active if they ordered in some period of time, and are they still exhibiting these attributes, they still have an active card on file and they've purchased within the last some number of days. And we can see and in this case a daily grain, how many customers were added to the active number, which are these green colors here, and how many customers were removed from that number, which is a gray and 2 shades of blue. And on any given day, we are either adding to or removing from the number of customers that we consider active, which is the net total of this is this red line. And you can see at different points in the business, sometimes we are actually losing customers in aggregate, and sometimes we're growing quite rapidly. But this gives us real insight into changes in trends about why customers are coming and why they're leaving. Are they net new? Are they reactivating? And in a situation like this that we've had over the last few months, being able to quickly visualize and understand exactly what's going on with this kind of a look has been totally invaluable. And I was very impressed. This is double axis, positive, negative, stacked bar, multiple visualization thing. And yeah, Looker can totally do it, which is really cool. Okay, so wrapping up here, I think I'm at time. We're doing well through COVID. How do we do it? Well, step one was we were really lucky, right? And I don't want to gloss over this point. We happen to be selling hand sanitizer and hand soap and toilet paper on the internet, right? That is not because we are good strategists, and it's because we're lucky. And I don't take that for granted. And to a large extent, there's a bunch of businesses that have just been sorted into these categories, somewhat at random, of you're going to have tailwinds from this, or you're going to be totally hosed, right? And so we were lucky, for sure. But in any case, the thing that I think that allowed us to sort of make hay while the sun shone, it's obviously not a good outcome here, but we were able to set priorities rapidly within the company, and then we acted. We didn't sort of sit on our heels, but we leaned in, and we were very, very action-oriented towards making changes to take care of these, to take care of our customers and to make sure that we could stay on top of what was going on. And then we measured and we managed. And we were not able to use some of our, operationalized reporting that we've been relying on for years, because that stuff broke right away, right? It wasn't relevant anymore, but we could fall back on a really strong data warehousing strategy, on a really strong set of Looker models, and a really good training across the company so that everybody could see what was going on and make good decisions autonomously. And so I think this was an opportunity for some of our data strategy to shine, which I was really proud of, and just the company overall to pull together and lean in and try to do our best through a really challenging situation.